Hey, this is Sean here, and this is day 9, and the topic for today is lessons from the Great Depression. Kind of apt right now to talk about the Great Depression, and I have no doubt that a lot more people have been looking at the Great Depression than previously. Now, it's really good to go back into history and look and see what occurred, what lessons can we derive from that, what were the people like, what was their response to the situation. All very helpful in these times. Now, hopefully we don't actually get into a Great Depression that lasts 10 years. I hope we don't. However, being a student of history, you have to understand that that's entirely possible. Okay, it's entirely possible. So first, a little bit about the Great Depression. 1929 to 1939, roughly, depending on the different sources that you read. And then when you get into the details of the Great Depression, I don't think they're as important as the lessons that we can derive from the entire experience. Okay, so the Great Depression, a lot of people say, oh yeah, the stock market crashed 1929. Well, it's not, the stock market crashing in 1929 was not the Great Depression. It was not, that is not the Great Depression, right? Just like today, the Dow tanking from previous highs over the last few years is not the real problem with the situation that we're having. Okay, the real problem with the situation we're having is that businesses are failing, and same thing with the Great Depression. It wasn't the stock market crashing. That was more of a symptom of other things, but it was the subsequent crash of businesses and the laying off of people, and so you had high numbers that were unemployed. That's actually the real meat of the Great Depression. Okay, now fast forward to today, we see some similar things. In fact, we're seeing unemployment rates skyrocket in such a tiny period of time, even way more intense than during the Great Depression. However, that doesn't mean that we are destined for 10 years of Great Depression. I have no idea what the next year is going to look like, let alone the next 10. So all we can do is generally build up our self-sufficiency, our general preparedness, and what we really want to do is build resiliency into our lives, meaning that we can get hammered by something and bounce back quickly. Okay, so we can develop contingencies for different possibilities, different scenarios that we may come across where things get tough. Okay, and the one thing about this, lessons from the Great Depression, most people think, oh yeah, that's it's good for frugal. We have to be very frugal. We have to wash our foil, and the lard goes up on the counter, and we reuse everything. We make do. We do without. Okay, kind of a scarcity and a poverty mindset. That is not what I'm talking about. Okay, having an abundance mindset, which I think is the right way to approach all this, is not incompatible with being frugal, with using lard, with reusing things, with making do, with doing without. Okay, those are not incompatible things. Unfortunately, we tend to combine the two, right? We have someone who's either an abundance mindset or they have a poverty or a scarcity mindset. You can have an abundance mindset while not having a lot or being in a bad situation. Okay, so keep the abundance mindset while we learn lessons from things like the Great Depression and how we then apply that to our lives and become more resilient. Okay, so we want to be a hearty people, and that's the one thing, all the bad in the Great Depression, what it produces is two generations, in my opinion, of hearty people, of people that did have a mindset of we will make do. We'll do without. They didn't have mental breakdowns because they didn't have their particular brand of whatever that's in the store right now. Okay, they were hardy, and so we want to develop that hardiness. And so it takes training, and it takes the right mindset. All right, so what else can we derive from the Great Depression? Okay, so they were a hardy people. They did make do. All right, and that saying that's common, that actually first started, or at least it's attributed to Calvin Coolidge long before the Great Depression. And he actually said, eat it up. I don't remember the exact quote, but eat it up, make do, do without, use it up, that kind of thing. Now, that did morph a little bit later from the Great Depression into World War II into like use it up, make do, do without. Okay. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, we've kind of become this disposable culture, this disposable society. And, we don't make do and we don't do without. And I know I've talked about some of these things throughout this series, like, for example, a touch of minimalism and doing hard things and how that can inoculate and train us. Again, all good things and things that I believe that the people that endured the Great Depression understood. Okay, they did without, okay, or they made do, right? They did use it up. They did eat it up, right? You didn't just toss away leftovers. And they either used it all. There was even such a thing as called as depression soup, which is basically whatever we have. It goes into a soup and it makes it go a little further. And I guarantee you, if there was any scraps at all, those scraps went to the chickens or whatever else they had. Another interesting phenomenon from the Great Depression that we can learn has to do with supply chain. And again, I have talked about this, is that right now, the supply chain is holding. That doesn't mean it's going to be holding continuously or even next week. Okay, as long as it holds, everyone's going to be fine. If it doesn't hold, people are going to come apart. Okay, because we're not a culture of make do, do without. We're a culture of what am I going to do? I've lost this or that, and somebody needs to replace it. Okay, so we need to hopefully learn those lessons fast. Supply chain. In the Great Depression, they did not have just-in-time inventory, supply chain like we have today, sophisticated. They didn't, ship things thousands of miles. Very, very few items, were shipped long ways, and they had those, but it was much less, right? Everything that they needed was grown either themselves locally or regionally. But an interesting point about that is that in some areas in the Great Depression, you had entire fields of food rotting away because there wasn't people to be able to work those properly or to be able to finance the operation, and it just didn't happen. And in other places, not very far away, people were starving to death, literally. Okay, so you had the supply chain breakdown. Okay, so what the lesson learned there is that we need to have as close to home as possible our supply chain. Okay, especially with the essentials. Okay, and I don't even mean like, it's like, oh, well, I get all my food at the farmer's market. It's all local, da 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 da. So what? What if they shut down the farmer's markets tomorrow? All right. Anyway, as close as you can to home. And then local, okay? And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But they also had not just the supply chain issue, for sure. They had the mindset of they had to do multiple things. Okay, they had to have multiple skills, and I've talked about this as well, being a generalist as opposed to a specialist. I mean, they all did what they had to do to make it. Okay, so everyone the kids were off, foraging or trying to sell apples on the street or trying to get this or that. And, if I'm talking about, a traditional family, the man was out looking for work or trying to get work, and the woman was doing something else as well. So whether it was making something at home and trying to sell it or also going to try and find work. I mean, everybody was pitching in and doing whatever they had to do, to include hunting, foraging, gardening, collection. I mean, just whatever they had to do it. So multiple skills is definitely a lesson learned. I think here's another lesson learned from the Great Depression is don't put all your eggs in one basket. I know we hear that a lot even today, and that's kind of well known, but do we actually follow that logic? You know, we also all know that we're supposed to keep 3 to 6 months worth of expenses and finances. Do we follow that? Very, very few people actually do that. Okay, even though we all know we should. Okay, and we all know we shouldn't put all of our eggs in one basket. Well, how many people are putting all of their eggs in one basket by having a single job, and that's their entire source of income? And if they lose it, they're done. Okay, they're in a hurt locker. Okay, they're immediately hurt. And I'm not suggesting, that's most of us. Okay, most of us. But the lesson learned there is that we should all be working on developing multiple streams of income. Okay, nothing wrong with having a W-2 job as an employee. Okay, however, don't let that be your only source of income. Okay, you can have other sources of you could start a side hustle. You could start other things. You could invest money that returns. There's a return on the investment in many more ways than just the stock market. Okay. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Okay, that includes finances. Absolutely, multiple streams of income. Multiple streams of income. We have 5 streams of income here, and at various times we've had several others. Okay, not that. Don't get me wrong. It's not like that's all pouring in massive amounts of money. It's not. And if I did lose my job, my primary job, we'd be hurting, but we could make it, and we'd have to really tighten up. But I'll tell you, to be honest with you, we're doing that already. As soon as all this started kicking off, we had a family meeting. We sat down and we said, okay, here's the range of scenarios that we could see in front of us over the next several months. Okay, and this is the one that we're going to plan off of. We're going to plan to that, even though I hope that doesn't happen. And there's some chance of that happening, but it's not. It shouldn't happen. Probably won't. I hope it doesn't. But we're going to plan to it anyway. So we did some things immediately that we put in place, like lowering our expenses in certain areas, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. The next lesson learned is they were very tight back then. Families were tight, communities were tight, and that's something that we need to rebuild because we don't have that a lot. Okay, there's some areas obviously in the United States today that have tight communities and tight families and all that kind of stuff, but not nearly as much, and definitely not as a culture. Okay, we're more divided and this and that than we were back then. Okay, that's not to say that it was all roses back then either. Okay, so what do we need to do? One, you got to take care of yourself first, right? If you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of your family? Okay, that's the whole oxygen coming down in the airplane thing. Take care of yourself, take care of your family. Okay, the next thing is that you need to start building your network right now if you're not doing it already. What do I mean by that? So your network, everybody talks about community, and that's a great thing. But what does that mean? A lot of people think their farmers markets are their community, right? That's my community. It's like, well, if the farmers market's shut down, is that really going to help you? No, it's not. Okay, so you build your network. Okay, and network is actually more important than your community. Okay, your network that's your family. Those are your friends. Those are those people that you keep in contact with. You need to build that up, strengthen that, get together, or talk on Zoom, whatever, and text, phone calls, talk to each other. How can you support one another? Right now, start now. Don't wait till things fall apart to do that. Okay, and then in turn, when you do that, when you take care of yourself, you take care of your family, and you build your network, you are taking care of your community. Okay, you're strengthening your community. and you're strengthening your local area, which strengthens the regional area, etc. Okay, so that's definitely a lesson learned from the Great Depression. Okay, so strength, and that's our lesson learned is we need to strengthen that. And I'm going to put emphasis on self, family, and network. Okay, that's what you really need to do. And there's nothing wrong with having, say, an online network too. That's a great place for learning, building, and sharing information, all of that. But you need to have a real in-person network that is around you, your immediate area. Okay. Those are some of the main things. There's so many more lessons learned, and when people look at and study the Great Depression, a lot of times they look at the financial markets and they say, well, the government should do this or that, blah, blah, blah. I think that we need to focus on our sphere of influence. Okay, one, work on our sphere of influence. Two, stop worrying about what you can't control. And do these things. Do these things, right? Build your network, work on yourself, work on your family. You develop a range of scenarios and plan to those, and take action, right? Develop multiple streams of income. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Also, that also is literally with food as well. Okay, don't grow one crop, right? One of the big downfalls of monocropping is that if, say, one bug or pest comes through and takes out that whole crop, that's it, you're done. As opposed to growing 10 different things, and yes, 2 of them were taken out by pests, for example, but you still have 8. Okay, so that's the same thing across the board. Growing food and your finances and everything in between. All right, so those are some lessons learned from the Great Depression. I hope that you enjoyed that. Please subscribe, like, and comment. All right, we'll see you next time.